My name is Michael Williams. I'm from New York. I'm 56 years old, and I currently work for the World Meteorological Organization. I am an international civil servant. That's what I always fill out on the visa forms, and I specialize in communications. I studied at the undergraduate level history, English, literature, and so forth, so the social sciences, but also some physical sciences, because in the US you can have quite a mix of studies in the undergraduate. And for my graduate degree, I studied international relations. And then I also completed half of a master's degree in economics. So today I'm head of communications, or chief, which is a word I like very much, chief of communications for the World Meteorological Organization. And I spent much of my career at the United Nations Environment Program as a communications officer supporting the environmental conventions. I'm not sure if I chose the profession or it chose me. I started off in New York as an editor, essentially a writer, editor, in the field of finance, because of course finance is a big area in New York, big subject in New York, in the same way the United Nations is here in Geneva. So I started in that field, and then I saw the opportunity with the World Economic Forum in Geneva, who was looking for English language mother tongue editors in the field of business, and I fit that. And finding myself here in Geneva, then the next step was that many of the jobs available for international people was, of course, the UN system. And I've always been I've always had a big interest in environment. Even in the 1970s, when I was a kid, I would help to load the trucks that used to come around for newspaper recycling. So it's always been an interest of mine. I was very lucky to find an opportunity there using my editorial skills and to enter a field that was of interest to me. There's a variety of skills. Certainly, I bring some technical skills, I would call them, which is writing, editing, communications more generally. But certainly, you do need the capacity to work with people with very, very different cultures and backgrounds, which is more challenging than it may sound, because people do have very different views on hierarchy, for example, how to relate to other people. And people need to become comfortable with this and not to be offended when people have different assumptions and so forth. So these interpersonal and cultural sensitivity skills are very, very important. Working with people is very, very important. And having a lot of curiosity and interest in learning is also very important. Well, the positive ones are, of course, that working in the United Nations system, working internationally is very exciting. You not only get to meet people from all over the world, you get to travel, or I do at least, all over the world, which has been remarkable. I've worked with presidents and prime ministers and ministers. Some of my most interesting work was being the spokesperson for the Climate Change Convention. So really being there with really high-level politics, which is very exciting. And of course, all these other issues I've dealt with elephant ivory issues, biodiversity, chemical pollution, issues that scientifically and politically are all fascinating. And so I've been able to, over my career, climb many learning curves, which has been very exciting and very enjoyable. And I suppose mostly on the negative side is, and this is not unique to the UN, but working for a big organization does involve a certain amount of bureaucracy, and this can be frustrating. And one gets used to it after a while and learns how to work with it and not let it prevent you from accomplishing things. Again, I've had the pleasure of working on many of the environmental conventions. In the 1990s was a great period in the UN for many issues. Everything seemed possible. There was a lot of good feeling about the future of intergovernmental international action, which doesn't exist in the same way today. But so I had the privilege of working on the Climate Change Convention, which was extraordinary, the Kyoto Protocol. Again, just seeing how governments protect their interests while at the same time trying to find solutions for the planet was just an extraordinary experience that stays with me today. and also on some of the other issues that are not as high profile, or it's not as much money involved, not as much impact on economies and national interests, like chemicals, like biodiversity, and so forth. I've also had many opportunities to sit in and listen to very high-level negotiations, to try to explain them to the public, to the press, and so forth. So all of those have been very powerful experiences. International Geneva has been a very important part of my life as well. I've been here over 20 years. I'm very supportive of International Geneva. One analogy could be in Silicon Valley, you have a lot of people who are experts in IT and technology and so forth. You have a cluster of expertise. You meet people in the restaurant, on the street, in the office who know a lot about subjects of interest to you. And that's very similar here in Geneva. I have met as friends, parents of my children's friends, colleagues, people, my neighbors, all sorts of people doing extraordinary things that are interesting to me. So there's a real depth of very interesting people, international, but also Swiss, to meet and to learn from here. One thing I always say is my personal view is one should not, many young people are aware of the United Nations and think that that's the right place to start. My own view is not to start with the United Nations, because it's not the best place to get the technical skills that will bring you through a good career. It's not really designed that way to bring people up and train them and so forth. I think one should look at NGOs, at private sector, at other opportunities that maybe are less famous or less well known, and really focus on developing a set of skills. That can be languages, but it has to be more than languages. In my case, writing and editing have been the skills that have helped me have a career. But it could be any, it could be accounting, it could be all sorts of other sorts of skills. And I would recommend really focusing on your first 10 years or whatever in your 20s, on building a skill set. And then the world opens up to you.